Welcome to another episode of Into the Pot, the show where we review different pieces of media, what they meant to us, and how they've added flavor to the stew of our lives. Today we're talking about Superman, the 2025 film by James Gunn. As always, we'll start with the good, then the bad, and finish off with those themes and details that resonated with us. Beware there will be spoilers ahead. So, before we start off with the good, I'm joined by my two good friends, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, my name is Jalen. I am a very good friend of Timur, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hi guys, my name is MelReq. I'm also a very long time fan of Sable Stew, and I'm really excited to be here and talk about this movie.
All right, sounds good. So then let's go ahead and start off with the good. What was the good from Superman? What did you like about the film?
If I may be able to start, I'm a bit of an outsider when it comes to the superhero movies of it all. So I'm hoping my perspective can be something a little bit different. Um, I was like somebody that started with like Marvel, and I got a little bit burnt out after Endgame, and I kind of haven't returned except for like little things like WandaVision was one that I tuned into, but that felt like its own thing. And so when you had talked about maybe we should talk about Superman and having that conversation, I was a bit apprehensive, but I wanted to do it because I want to have this conversation. And I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a great way to return to the superhero genre. It didn't feel like I was getting in over my head with the experience. I liked the tone that it struck. I feel like I'd seen a little bit of like Batman versus Superman, the Snyder universe of the DC universe. And I was into it, but it was a little bit heavy for me personally. Um, the just like the saturation and the colors, not to mention the theming. But this version felt lighter, more playful, while still engaging in very serious and also very topical issues. And maybe we'll discuss that, maybe we won't. But um, I was pleasantly surprised, and I will say I went to go watch it twice, which if you told me last week that I was going to watch a superhero movie twice in 1 week, I would have told you you're on some sort of drug. So something changed for me. But yeah.
Yeah, that I would probably echo that. I feel like growing up, it's kind of crazy. I never really watched Justice League Unlimited and everything else like too much, and I wasn't really a big fan of Superman. Uh, Primarily because I think I just never really saw myself as Superman, and I realized like once I really came of age and became a teenager and stuff, the only sort of Superman like inspiration or like model that I had was the Zack Snyder Superman with Henry Cavill. So I think that was like the time where I was like, okay, let me actually process superheroes. Now we're getting the Marvel, now we're getting this stuff. And so when I watched that, like Superman was grittier, Superman was darker. And I think just that feel of Superman was something that I was like, okay, it's kind of like Batman, but he's kind of like, the good guy. Whereas Batman is like trying to be the good guy. He's just the good guy. And so it was like, oh, with this movie, I also wasn't too excited for it. I know James Gunn has done some really good movies, especially with Guardians of the Galaxy. And I was like, maybe it'll be good. And like you said, like I thought I was gonna get overwhelmed. I saw, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific in the trailer, Hawk Girl. I was like, what? Like, there's gonna be too much going on. But I was pleasantly surprised. I loved this movie. I would watch it a second time, but I haven't yet. And it's one of those movies where I'm like, dang, I feel like, you know, we're back. Even though we haven't even started the DC universe, it's like, wow, we're back. And I'm like, we haven't even started yet. Let's slow down. I don't know what's the next chapter is gonna be like, because I know they're gonna make Supergirl, Swamp Thing, Clayface, all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, Superman is at least a really good movie for me. But what about you, Melrek?
Yeah, mine's my demographics quite different. I grew up with Superman. My mom loves Superman. My first introduction to superheroes was the Christopher Reeve Superman. Like we would always just watch it like as I was growing up, other than like Star Wars and whatever. Um, and yeah, like I like Superman. But when I got introduced to other characters like, maybe like the X-Men or like Spider-Man and things like that, it just seemed too cookie cutter where it's like, okay, he's invincible. There's really nothing interesting about this character. Because I also, at the time that, our age, I grew up with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and he doubled down on, like, the Peter Parker arc where, like, we were seeing him struggle as a person, and I didn't really particularly see that with Superman. I was like, "Okay, he's a reporter. He's clumsy as a reporter as Clark Kent," but there's, like, really no, like, nuance to it. Like, it's not really that interesting. It's like, "Okay, cool." As opposed to, like, Batman where you would see him, like, hide whenever there's, like, a get together. He's like, "Oh, Robin, we gotta slide down the pole, the president's calling." Superman didn't really have that. He had, like, a telephone booth. Like, they actually did that on the nose thing. So we run deep in our family about Superman. So I've been with Christopher Reeve, like, Tom Welling, and also, yeah, I was trying to remember his name. Brandon Routh, the
Mhm.
2006 Superman Returns, the unofficial official sequel to Superman 1 and 2 with Christopher Reeve, which is pretty interesting.
Mm.
But I really enjoyed it. I mean, my favorite Marvel movie is Guardians, so I fully trust James Gunn with everything that he does, and, realizing just recently that he also wrote, like, Scooby-Doo live action,
Yeah.
I was just like, "Whoa, wait a minute. That's kinda crazy." So I rewatched
Are
that the other day.
yeah, are these, like, the best movies ever now? Like, Scoo
It just yeah, completely glazed over. I was like, that was fun." And then you watch it, you're like, "Actually, this is really funny as an adult, and this is not really meant for kids, actually." But we're not talking about Scooby-Doo, we're talking about Superman, the other movie in the room, which is, I think it's fantastic, like, kind of a return to what Christopher Reeve was trying to do with the character. Again, like, when you read a Superman comic, it's really saturated. There's, like, a lot of colors, there's a lot of characters happening, like and, James Gunn has been talking about this for a while where he intended for this to feel like a comic book movie, like, you're reading it from panel to panel, and it does give off that vibe where you're, like, actually watching it come to life. Um and it's so different from, I would say, like, the Zack Snyder one where it's a very different take on it where it's so dark and, you have to have the lights turned down at a particular brightness because you wanna be immersed in that kind of universe. But for this one, I think the colors really I would just say the first one that's really great about it is the colors that complement the kind of idea of, like, hope and, like, brightness in the world and, like, what he's trying to go for and what he's fighting for. So yeah, I think James Gunn did a really wonderful job, and looking back at, like, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I was like, "Wait a minute." Like, he really upped the saturation for this one, and it really works out as a comic book movie, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. I really like the colors for this film. I have not watched any other Superman. As I said, like, Henry Cavill was the only Superman movie that I had watched. I watched a little bit of the animated ones, but that's why watching this one was like, whoa, I I've never really seen like a Superman movie. I've seen,
Yeah.
Zack Snyder Superman movies, but I've never seen a Superman movie. So I was like, should I watch Smallville now? Like, this is pretty good, Like, should I watch just like all the Superman movies? So it's wonderful that they can take a franchise, a long existing franchise, and make you like it so much that you're like, maybe I should actually watch the other stuff that they've done, you know? And same with like Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I watched number one and number two, and I did not watch three. And the main reason was like, thought it was going to be really sad and like just emotional. And I was like, I don't know. Marvel is like, I don't know at this point. But after seeing Superman, I'm like, dang, I have to watch that one too, like the Guardian trilogy, and just be like, just immersed in this because James Gunn does really good movies of recently. And I was like, wow, this is actually very good. But Jalen, did you watch the original Superman movies at all?
Like the ones from like the
So
previous century,
70s, 80s,
I
90s.
haven't. The most I've heard about it is like from my mother, just being like, "Oh man, like that's the Superman that she remembers most fondly." But I'm on a similar note. I'm curious about peeking back into like Supermans of the past because I'm always fascinated with long-standing franchises and the way that each iteration reflects back to us, like what's important to us as an audience and what we need to see because, yeah, it's only been 10 years since the latest iteration of Superman and night and day, like literally in terms of the coloring and everything like that, night and day. So I just find it fascinating. Were we getting sick of that? I would argue that I personally was as an individual viewer, um, of the coloring and how broody and angsty everything was. I think there's room for that, but I think, yeah, I'm excited for the way that this new franchise is going, and yeah, I'm curious about going back too.
Yeah, and I like that you touch on it because, like, it's so bright and so, like, hopeful. That's what I really like about the movie because that dark, brooding nature, like, again, is better served for Batman, you know? And even the Wonder Woman films of the past, like, I feel like they were also a little bit dark and broody, just with their tone and with their colors. And so it's like seeing this Superman, one, like, be hopeful, but not only just hopeful, be like kind of dorky, kind of be like, "Oh, golly gee," like, "Oh gosh," like,
Oh yeah.
and like that he was trying to save everyone like to the best that he can. Like you see him save the squirrel, you see him like try to save the dog, and ultimately he just kicks the dog. And it's like,
He blows it away. He blows it
oh, it
away.
goes it away, yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh man, I was like, poor dog, but I know he's trying to save people. And even like the giant, like the kaiju monster, it was like he was like, "No, no, no, like, we can, like, keep it safe and, like, take care of it and lock it up and study it and stuff like that," and they're like, "No, no, no, no." But I really appreciated that he was being, like, an advocate and, like, actually being hopeful. And, like, MelReq, like, is that something that the previous Supermans, like, instilled you with? Because I know both of you talk about your mothers and how they would talk about, like, that was their Superman. I don't know if they've seen this movie. My mother has never spoken about Superman once in her life. I don't even think she's ever seen a Superman movie. Maybe Man of Steel, but otherwise, like, I don't think she's ever discussed it. So I'm like, how does your parents feel about this new movie, or even like, just Superman of the past? What did they feel from it?
Yeah, my mom and I wore Superman shirts to the movie, so we were, like, really excited. I would say overall, like, she really enjoyed the movie. There is, like, a particular part of the Superman movie that she doesn't like, but it's a very minute thing. For her, with the Christopher Reeve movie, like, you have Superman 1 through 4, but we only talk about 1 through 2. But the first one, he's literally just fighting Lex Luthor the entire time. Like, there's really nothing extraterrestrial that's happening. Like, it's just basically a terrorist act of, like, the entire movie, just, and him turning back time at the end to save Lois Lane, which is kind of crazy, and everyone talks about that. But Superman 2 is like the first introduction to like particular aliens. So that's when you have General Zod, like the Man of Steel storyline,
Mm.
which, our generation, when we were growing up very angsty with the angsty Man of Steel of 2013, like we kind of like it meshed well with like what we were going through, I think, like considering like what we were going through at that age. So that was Superman 2's storyline, and that was the first introduction of aliens, but still like you mentioned the kaiju and all this stuff, like Mr. Terrific, there's a lot of, like, alien stuff happening in this movie, which is really good, and it was my mom's first introduction to, like, just the vastness of characters in the Superman world, and I feel like this really does it justice because when you open up a Superman comic, you don't really know what's gonna happen, and usually it is extraterrestrial. But a lot of the previous movies have stuck it safe, like Zack Snyder with like, "Okay, let's just do General Zod," and, like, "Let's just insert Doomsday." So they just picked out, like, the really big characters, and I'm really glad that in this particular movie, and I think my mom as well, because she's a huge, like, alien fanatic, that James Gunn, like, kind of picked out, like, these very extraterrestrial characters like Metamorpho, um, like the Kaiju, right? It's, like, really interesting to see somebody from like a boy from Kansas fighting like a big kaiju where it's just like, that's really random. So I think a lot of people also putting that up is that a lot of people were very concerned with that existence. It's like, are there a lot of things happening in this movie that will take away from like what the story, like the development of Superman is? And I think it's very true to the character, more so for the Christopher Reeve Superman. You can really feel it. I mean, James Gunn literally reused he repurposed John Williams' theme for Superman for the entirety of the movie. Although, they do add their particular bits and beats, but it is a homage overall to what Christopher Reeve did and like the foundational things that he did for the character. And like, I liked how you mentioned that, like, one good thing about Superman is that it seems so campy. I think there was a particular scene where Crypto, like, kind of ruined the Fortress of Solitude. He's like, "What the who?" He's like, "Crypto?" He's like, "What the hey, dude?" It was like he tries so hard to not curse, right? And it's just so funny because it's almost equivalent to, like, the Batman of Adam West where like you have Robin like, oh my golly, Batman. It's just like very weird to say that, but it's also really funny to see that these characters are really going out of their way to stay true to who they are. Like they're a symbol of hope. They're a symbol of like we have the ability to improve in ourselves. Um, and then just doing that, going out of their way and say, "What the hey, dude?" Like, no one says that, like, not even in Kansas, but he's trying to be the best person that he can be because he knows that he is, like, looked up to in that way. And I think that particular part my mom really enjoyed, just, like, that hopefulness and, like, that potential to be better, which is probably something we're gonna talk about, like, when Superman has his little monologue at the end,
Yeah.
to Lex Luthor, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a quick question as well.
Mhm.
What was the oh, well, maybe we'll talk about this in the don't likes thing, but I remember you said your mom didn't like one particular part, so
Yeah.
we'll maybe hold that.
Yeah, she didn't like Superman being beat up all the time. I think that was a very main critique that a lot of people had. Like, he just got like, he got his trunk served to him many times in this film. I mean, I would
Mhm.
say at least 15% of the film, he was also kind of caged up with Metamorpho. So, like, we were, again, diverted to the Lois Lane development of, like, okay, he needs the help of his friends, which is a really good plot line because it's always Superman and his friends, and, like, he can't do things alone. And that gives, again, more nuance to the character where he can't do everything alone. Like, he needs other people, he needs people to rely on. And it's so funny that Guy Gardner, like, ends up in the end, he's all like, well, kid, Superman couldn't make it, but you got an upgrade. Like, it was just so funny him saying that when we all know that's not the case, but
Yes.
he was still able to do the job of saving those people. But the thing is, my mom is so used to seeing the Christopher Reeve, like, kind of invincibility of it. She's the typical, like, cartoon caricature that you see of Superman is
Mhm.
him being shot at and him not being moved by any bullet at all. But in this one, like, every punch, you felt it for Superman. You're like, oh, shoot, he's being tossed around. Mind
Yeah.
you, like, the very opening sequence to set the tone of, like, this is not the kind of caricature that you should keep in mind going into this film is the opening shot is him literally bleeding in the snow. Like, he had his dog drag him home, and that was like that kind of, like, again, sets the precedent of the whole movie where he's like, he's not the most invincible person that we thought he was. Like, he is attempting to be more human and show, like, the more defeative side of him, which, like, he has the potential to be hurt. But my mom has a very different perception, I think, of Superman of being this person who is untouchable, flawless in all sorts of ways. Yes, like, he cares for his family, but again, there is a next step which my mom doesn't wanna acknowledge, which is, you know, those people can get hurt, and you can get hurt in turn. And looking back at the Christopher Reeve one, at the end of the Superman 1, Lois literally dies, and Superman is so hurt by this that he, like, fixes the rotation of the Earth to turn back time to save her. So he's not the most flawless person,
Mhm.
but I guess I get it. Like, a majority of people see him as, like, yeah, he's invincible, he does everything, he can't get hurt, and seeing him suffer in the hands of a bald person who's trying to terrorize him every minute of the day, maybe not be as appealing as, him having those small human characteristics of his character.
Yeah, and Lex Luthor was such a hater. God dang.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe if he had hair, maybe
He's
he'd
like
be a little bit better, but
Yeah.
I will say I appreciate that he was a real hater though, like,
yeah.
to his core, it
Full
came out. It was very deeply rooted, and I can support that on my
Dude
own
was
level.
trembling with hate for
I
most of the
know.
movie.
I know.
Literally trembling.
It was so, like, good and visceral and so funny too. It's like, take it easy, man. You're a billionaire. You're like a super genius, you know? But it's just so funny how bitter he was about Superman. But I like that you talked about the intro. The intro, I think for me, when the text pop up on screen and it was like 3 minutes ago, Superman lost his first fight ever, and you're like, holy crap! Like, what a way to start a movie. Like, that's like everything you know about Superman was just like twisted. And you're like, holy crap, he just lost. And you're like, wow, you're just thrust into this whole world where I think the writing for that little piece is like, wow, you have all these thoughts about Superman. He's invincible. You know so much about him already. And look at that. He lost. And you're like, whoa, that was a crazy moment. I love that a lot from the movie. And I just like I want to extend this to you all too. Like, what are your favorite scenes about the movie? Because I know I have one scene in particular that is my absolute favorite, and that is when Lois is interviewing Superman, Clark Kent, at the very beginning, because it's like that moment felt so real and so frustrating and so like on the nose, like what is life today and how like being kind and being empathetic and caring is being twisted into like these political agendas and like all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, just like the way that they acted that scene, all those like the character moments of just like talking over each other, Superman getting frustrated and like being just overwhelmed with all this stuff, like even social media, even though he doesn't see it that much. But just like it felt so human, that he was just trying his hardest and still he's being like essentially framed as a villain, even though he was a hero. And so I really love that scene. That was my favorite in the entire movie. And like I was so emotional at that part. I was like, oh my God, like this is so like I try to be a good person. And like even though one person like with some of my video essays, like I post out a video and I'm like, this, and like someone misconstrues it in a way that they're like, how could you say that? And I'm like, oh, like I don't mean to say it this way. And I didn't intend to say it this way, but I have no like I just try to be a good person. And so that's why I love that scene so much. But for you all, what is your favorite scenes?
Yeah, I first of all, I also really enjoyed that scene, and I think, I'm not the first one to think this thought, but the entire movie was making the case, I would say, for Superman being human. And, like what's more human than getting frustrated when your actions that you did from a good part of your heart and your soul are being misconstrued so wildly. Like that's very understandable and very human. So I agree. I really liked that scene. I really enjoyed the scene when Superman is back home with his parents and he has that moment outside with his dad. And it's just about like defining yourself and like finding the meaning in the upbringing that you've had that makes sense for you and like whatever is going to send you off into being the best person you can be for yourself and the people that you love and care about. And I just really enjoyed that and the emotion that the dad brought to that scene. I like that he was more of the mushy uh, character of the two and the parents. Um, that one really touched me, and I felt like we needed that emotional beat outside of, the romance of Lois and Superman. That made it really special for me.
That's a good one. I love that scene.
Okay, anyways, my favorite scene is probably the second scene with Lois. Again, like I don't know if that was his apartment or not that like he flew into when he was convicted of, you know, the full intention of why he was there
Yeah.
to begin with by his parents. Like the second part of the speech that got kind of lost in translation. Um, but there was a part like like this is the punk rock monologue, if you guys remember.
Yeah.
This is the one where he's like, "Oh, maybe that's punk rock, being cool or being hopeful or being whatever." But my favorite part about that one was just him apologizing, right? Like he still had with all these things going on, he's like, "Did you really mean that?" Like that like this is why you're not in a relationship or like why things don't work out. So that again like grants him a lot of humanity, like as a character, but also how he ended it where she's like, "Are you leaving?" He's like, "Yeah, crypto's out there and he's probably scared, so I have to turn myself in." Like, he'll do all of that stuff, spoiler warning, for a dog that he doesn't even own, which is such an interesting thing for such a Superman thing to do. Because again, like you said, he went and swooped and saved a squirrel, for God's sake. Like, that's crazy that he like actually like, no film like, squirrels were harmed other than that squirrel. That squirrel was, like, the sole squirrel that he saved, but the things that he'll do, like, the stakes that he will take just to save the smallest creature or, like, even the smallest thing, like, everyone is equally cared for by Superman, and I feel like him saying that, like, he's just out there, like, "I have to turn myself in." It's like, he's out there, he's scared, he'll do everything and anything he can, no matter what, for anyone and anything equally. And I think that just encapsulates the character perfectly.
Yeah. No, that's a really good scene. I love that scene actually too. I see a lot of these scenes are just like the more emotional scenes and the more like hopeful scenes. What about just fun scenes? Action scenes? I'm gonna claim Mr. Terrific's fight. Oh my God, that song too on repeat in my
Fun, fun,
headphones.
fun, man.
Fun, fun, fun. Sun, sun, sun. Love, love, love. 5 years. Okay, so that scene was like so cool. I went into the movie worried about all the characters, and I was like, it's gonna be too much. It's gonna be way too comic booky. It's gonna be a little bit too much. And I left going like, oh my God, I loved all the characters. they were all done so well. Like, though they didn't have like much screen time in most of the cases, it was like, wow, this is like really, really good. And so Mr. Terrific was one of those characters where I was like, I don't even know who this is. I've never seen him before in my life. And I was like, oh, okay, he's awesome. Like, this is incredible. The scene where Lois is just looking around and she's like, holy crap. Like that was my reaction. I was like, this is so good. But like, what was your two like fun scenes or just like enjoyable scenes that you loved from the movie?
Well, I'll say firstly to the point of the characters and the fear of it being too overwhelming. Um, I was pleasantly surprised by that as well. And I feel like um, after Endgame of it all, I was like, if there's a million characters in this, I'm simply going to walk out. But I feel like they distributed the time pretty well, and it was still Superman's movie at the end of the day. So I was happy. Oh goodness, I loved the scene when they're trying to rescue Superman and Crypto, folks from the Pocket Universe,
Mm,
and like Superman, like to MelReq's point about like trying to preserve everyone's life, like trying to save that bay and that I don't know what it's called, like the river in the Pocket Universe that is terrible and will kill people and all this stuff. Um, but it was so high stakes and spoiler, everybody made it out. It was very cool to watch. And I was scared, I have to say.
yeah, that was a good one. I loved him holding the baby with one hand.
Joey. Yeah.
Joey.
You would think that a extraterrestrial would have a different name for a baby. But anyways, yeah, I actually adding on to that point, like it was just so funny also, Mr. Terrific's like reaction to seeing Crypto for the first time. Like it's one thing to kind of accept that there are crazy things happen. I mean, they're going into a pocket universe and seeing a pocket universe, just how it's like set up and um him reacting to it and like how we would react, like, what the is that a flying dog? You know, it's just like things that we would say too, where it's like, that's just doesn't make any sense, but I guess so. I guess my favorite scene, I guess it's the one where the Justice Gang saves the people at the end.
Uh,
Like, you are built up to believe that Superman is gonna fly, like, that this climbing tension of, like, "Oh, is Superman gonna go?" Like, they're chanting his name, "Come on." And then, like I mentioned before, like, where Guy Gardner's like, "Oh, well, kid, Superman couldn't make it, but you got yourself an upgrade." And then, like, he spits out his gum where he's just, like, the most raunchy. I'm a Guy Gardner fan. I love that guy. He's just so funny. Like, I didn't really like him in previous iterations, but just Nathan Fillion's take on it is just so hilarious. Like, it just fits so perfectly with his bowl cut and whatever. But I think that portion where I'm just reminded that Superman can't really do everything by himself. Like, he does really need help. And I think what Jalen's mentioning too with Mr. Terrific and Lois going to the Pocket Universe to save Superman. Like, Superman would not have been able to make it out, you know, without these people opening the Pocket Universe to find him, um, for the sake of his cousin's dog, right? So it's kind of insane. But yeah, that's probably my favorite scene where it's just like, "Sorry, kid, you know, you got the Justice Gang," and just all their interactions. And I think, like, going into, like, what maybe potentially a lot of people didn't like possibly going in was they didn't want this too James Gunny, like, you know, like the quick quips and things like that.
mhm,
They didn't want it to like tarnish just like the hopefulness and the seriousness of scenes. But I think it was pretty well balanced too. Like, especially with that scene where it is serious. Like, you know, it does have political, you know, references where, you know, they're being invaded and all that stuff. But like having that Justice Gang who clearly don't take each other too seriously, save those people and still get the job done. I think that's really what the heart of Superman is like getting the job done. And it doesn't always have to be Superman.
yeah, that's a good point. And you mentioned Crypto and Sam, my wife, we both loved the movie. I was actually very surprised that she loved the movie so much too, because it was like she's not really a huge comic book fan, but for this movie, she loved it, and we both loved Crypto so much because he reminds us so much of our own little dog at home that immediately, like when we come home, she's like, "Okay, like how do we find him a little cape and stuff?" She's like, $30 on Amazon, and I'm like, "Well, you're like already seeing like Halloween costume already?" So yeah, no,
Halloween.
yeah,
She's like, this is for next week.
yeah. She's like, "Already ordered. What are you talking about?" So, yeah, no, I loved Crypto in the movie. He was so funny and made me love our little dog at home and miss him too. But yeah, no, like that's great. I think there's so many good things about the movie. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that you loved about the movie, or shall we head into the parts that we didn't necessarily like? The bad of
Mm,
the movie.
Mm. There's a lot of good things to talk about the movie, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible movie, but I
Yeah.
do.
I think it was great. But
Yeah,
I'm ready to get negative low key.
yeah. Let's do it. Let's turn up the Snyder.
What was the
Come.
funniest thing that happened in the movie before we move on? What was the
Ooh.
funniest thing, guys? Because I have one in mind in particular that I just like cried laughing.
Go ahead. What was yours?
Okay. All right. When Metamorpho helps the Justice Gang at the end,
Uh,
and then everyone's like, what the heck is that thing? And they're like, I don't know, but he's doing it. And then Hawkgirl tells him Metamorpho. It's like, yeah, you should think about joining the Justice Gang. And he's like, and then Guy Gardner's like, what? This guy? I'm sorry, have you seen this guy? You really don't want this guy to be the face of the Justice Gang? And then Metamorpho's like, Justice Gang? That's such a cool name. And then Guy Gardner like looks at him up and down. He's like, you're in. It's like,
it's pretty funny.
yeah, that was hilarious, I think.
That was very
Perfectly
funny.
delivered.
I agree. I really liked it's just like a little quick gag, but the one where Mr. Terrific is taking Lois to his like vehicle, whatever, I don't know what it's called, if I'm being honest. But the 10 minutes to open, and she's like, you couldn't figure out how to make a faster garage door. Okay. I just thought that that was like cute, and it didn't detract from like the larger story, but it was like a nice little gag. So that got a laugh out of me.
Yeah, that's a good one. My favorite, I'd probably say, is like just the aura that Jimmy had with women. I was like,
Yeah.
it was like so crazy. Like you see the two women just like talking about it, like, oh my god, he's so hot and everything. I'm like,
So
whoa,
put out by it. He's like,
yeah, like what is going on? Like I don't know Jimmy, and so Jimmy Olsen is a character that I don't really see. So I'm like, what is going on? And then the fact that the whole, Eve over there taking the photos was so in love with Jimmy, and I was like, oh my god, what a plot point! Like this was so incredible. And then at the end of it, he's like a whole weekend. It's like I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me! Like the world is at stake. Just sacrifice a weekend of your life.
That kind of pissed me off. I was
Yeah,
like, are you, please, for the sake of
yeah.
the world, let's go ahead and make this happen. Take her to Cheesecake Factory or whatever, but like secure this for us.
Yeah.
But I didn't notice that either till the second viewing, like the setup of he's this babe magnet or something like that. So I did catch that in the second time. I'm like, okay, they have to set him up as this irresistible guy for some reason. And I think the casting was perfect because you're like, he's attractive. Like, you know what I mean? Like decently attractive, but I think that's kind of what adds to the humor of it is like,
yeah.
in no real world is he like making women pass out in real time, but like funny.
Yeah, and I think James Gunn does a lot of like absurdist humor really well. Like especially in like The Suicide Squad. It was like there's so many moments that are just so funny because in the context of what the world is and what everything is going on, you're like, this is so random, this is so ridiculous. And the characters like just like accept it, you know? And you're just like, this is just like hilarious at times. It's just like so ridiculous. To say like the same with the garage scene in Superman, right? Like when the door is opening so slowly, it's like, yeah, this is ridiculous. And Lois is like, you couldn't make it faster? And it's like, yeah, this it's just such absurd humor. It's not like those quips or anything else like that. It's just like, yeah, we have superheroes, we have extraterrestrials, we got a slow garage. And it's like, it just adds to it so much. So that was a good question. Funniest scene thing. The movie was very funny. But are you ready to talk about the negative, the bad of the movie?
Let's get into it.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
I'm really interested to hear what you all think, if anything, was bad about the movie. Because I'll start. And my gripe is very small. And I think it's also something that because I'm not in the Superman universe, because I'm not reading the comics and stuff, the whole introduction and plot line in the pocket dimension felt so otherworldly, and especially like the boatman or something that was like this whole white being. I was like, there's so much where I was like, what are you talking about? What is going on? you
Yeah.
know? And I was like, "What?" And then they just kind of just go through like, "Oh, Lex Luthor created a pocket dimension. He made this stuff." And I'm like, "Whoa, what is a pocket dimension. Well, what are we talking about now? Like, is this like what? Like, how does this even work? And I think that to me was the part where I was like, I can accept, like, oh, the alienness of Superman and all the ridiculousness and the whole plot, but that started to feel so sci-fi and so foreign to me as just like someone who's watching, and I was like, I don't know what is going on anymore. And when they introduced Metamorpho, which I love as a character, I was like, where did he come from? What is like, how did Lex Luthor find him? He was like, oh yeah, I found this guy who can make kryptonite with his hands. I'm like, where? Like,
Yeah.
how? Like, it felt, that's the part to me for the movie where I was like, how? And then the big reveal of Ultraman at the end, where it was just a clone of Superman, which I couldn't even recognize because he had his long hair, and I was like, "Who's that
Yeah.
supposed to be?" I turned over to Sam, I'm like, "Who's that?" And she's like, "That's him." I was like, "It is?" Like, I could not
Yeah.
tell, but it was like, how did he do that? I can suspend disbelief, and I still love the movie so much, but those were the things where I was like, "Whoa, how did we get here?" I know he's a genius and a billionaire, and I know you can do a lot with money, and a lot of money is wasted on the rich people, doing these random adventures. But how is this happening? So I think that's just like, again, small gripe because I'm not into the comic universe. So that was my big bad, and that's probably the only bad thing that I would have to say about the movie. I actually kind of love the rest of it. What about you two? What are your thoughts?
I may piggyback onto that one only because I have less experience with the DC world. So it's like hard for me to like find really good nitpicky critiques. But I will say like it's always just challenging when you're kind of re-establishing an established franchise art like, that's already existing. Um, and so there were definitely moments throughout the movie where I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to understand that, like just based on the exposition that we've already been given, or if there is something that I should have been studying up on prior to watching this film. And I do think that's an example of one, like when the Pocket Universe came into play. And I think I just walked it back to like Lex Luthor's extremely rich and has access to all of these technological
Yeah.
innovations that I can't even fathom. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's just the comic book genre that we just kind of hand wave things away, or if I, as a viewer, should expect more explanation or more understanding for why certain characters have certain capabilities, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I guess that's my only critique is like finding that balance between new viewers that have no context for that world and then longtime fans like Ramel and his mom. Like, how do you bridge that gap and make both audiences happy? And I think in some ways they did, in other ways they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And I'm excited to hear, your thoughts, Ramel, about the whole, extra stuff that they added that, is something that a normal casual viewer would just not know existed.
Yeah. No, that was one of the things I wanted to mention too. I'm glad that you really brought it up, the pocket dimension thing. And there is there is reasoning behind it. Like, it threw me back to like the Guardians of the Galaxy one in 2014 where they had that whole Infinity Stones talk,
Mhm.
where it's like, oh, like it's deeper than you actually think. And I think that's what James Gunn was trying to do too, where you're trying to understand how deep it goes, like this is not just Earth, right? Um, and like this is kind of our first, I think this is our first iteration where Krypton isn't really mentioned or shown in any sort of way. So you don't have a good idea of like how vast this like universe is. And this pocket universe, I agree, where it's just I guess like we're supposed to underwrite it a little bit because it's been 3 years since he's been Superman, and like I guess 3 years of us not knowing what Lex Luthor's been doing, and it's been passed her by. Like one of the characters, the engineer, right? He's like, I like infused her blood with like nanotech, and now she can make anything. Blah blah
Mm.
blah. And but that doesn't also really verify that she can hack like a Kryptonian system. Like I'm pretty sure she mentioned that she was human, and now she can do that, and she was able to decrypt it. I just don't know. But yeah, like I think that was the risk of the time jump. Also, if we're talking about more so Lex Luthor's like machinations with like everything that's happening in terms of like how did he get here? Like how did he clone this person? Um, so that I mean those were things that were touched on in previous movies too, where um, Lex Luthor wanted to develop a clone for Superman, and he broke into the museum. I don't know, like, if you guys watch the Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, they show it, like, they actually provide, like, the context of, like, how he got there,
Mm,
not showing, like, how he had the expertise or the knowledge to do it, but he's like, "We can clone Superman, we need a piece of his DNA, and where else can we find it?" Superman donated a piece of his hair, and, like, it's iconic scene of, like, his Superman's singular strand of hair holding, like, a ton, like, 1 ton, like, at the end of it, so they go into the museum and they cut it and they take it from the museum, to show that that's how they made the clone of him. This one, again, there was a lot of things happening, and it's totally understandable that we're just kind of like going through it so fast with so many characters, so much ground to cover. We can't like discuss that. I didn't like that too. Like in terms of Lex Luthor, the one that didn't bother me, the development of like how he got to this point of having a clone nanotech infused person, and all that stuff didn't really bother me that much, I guess, because I was like, okay, it's been 3 years. I don't really know what he's been up to.
yeah.
It was more so like the development of Lex Luthor himself. That's like my main critique, probably, where like we understand how far he's willing to go. Meaning, like going back to that one scene where he shot the guy that helped Superman, right? Where he's like, "Oh, shoot, like, this is real." Like, he's willing to kill somebody, and he treated it like it was nothing, where he's like, "Well, that ended sooner than I thought." So he has the potential to be crazy, but I felt like with the movie in its entirety, they were, like, kind of confused of whether they should jump off the deep end still, like, go further down, because after you kill somebody, he wasn't fazed by it, and, like, that was the most extreme thing he did, honestly, throughout the whole movie. I mean, mind you, Superman 1 with Christopher Reeve, he became a full-fledged terrorist who was gonna blow up the world. So we understood the extremity of, like, how far he was willing to go, and we were seeing him develop with that, like, jumping off point. From here, it was like he killed somebody in cold blood, and then he was still, like, just, like, normal. Like, we never really, like, developed him as that very sinister person.
Mm,
And although, like, there may be sequels and we can see that, it's no, like, Jesse Eisenberg and, like, v Superman where he's just, like, so jittery and everything and, like, with long hair and everything, but yeah, I think that's my biggest gripe, where it's just like we were introduced how far he's willing to go to make Superman suffer, killing somebody in cold blood that had nothing to do with Superman, who just literally helped him out of a cart. And Superman, I think, also mentions it's been a week since I've seen the movie, but he's like, "Don't like kill him. He just gives me food here and there. Like, there's really he's not connected to me in any sort of way." And it's just so random that he picked this person out of all the people like Lois Lane and like Clark Kent, like all these people that he had the potential of choosing. He chose this random person that he identified while he was fighting the fist of a blow. Oh, the first fight, right? Like where he was helped out by that
yeah.
guy. So that kind of bothered me a bit. I was like, oh my God, like that's cool that we were able to see that real sinister side of Lex Luthor. But like that was as far as we went. And then when he had this little monologue, like how he hates Superman, I feel like we're taking a few steps back. He became a little more whiny. I'm like, that doesn't really mesh well with how sinister you really are as a person. Um, I would like to see more development of Lex Luthor, definitely after really that whole Russian roulette with the pistol with the guy, which was insane. Like that
Yeah.
is the first time we've seen like him just like seen, I think, murder in in DC so far, I think, just in cold blood. Um, yeah, I think that's my biggest gripe. But again, like there is potential to fix that with potential sequels. I think David and all them signed up for 2 movies at least, so we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna get a sequel to this one.
That'd be great. I'm looking forward to it. But that's a great point.
Yeah.
I also do think that in regards to like Lex Luthor, the ending where everything is happy and the news gets out that he was helping, the country and building, I forgot what the country was called, Luthertopia or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But like how the media turned on him so fast, that part to me
Mm,
was like, that doesn't happen in real life. You still got a bunch of channels going like, "No, Lex Luthor is still great." Like, "Oh my god, we still have to like he's being misunderstood, like they're lying, all this stuff." So that part to me was like obviously in the theme of like hope and optimism, I liked it, but it was also like, okay, I can suspend my disbelief for, the pocket universe, for, building the clone and everything else like that. But that part is like, I just really can't because I know in my heart not everyone would have turned on Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor has
Yeah.
so much money, so much power that there I mean, he's not going to stay locked up. That's just the obvious nature of it. So seeing that at the movie was like, this is not necessarily a happy ending. He's going to be back. And they're making it seem like he's a supervillain. He is. But in this instance, like, no one's going to see him like that because he's got so much power and influence. So,
Yeah. I want to add on to that actually. Now that you mentioned something that resurfaced a gripe that I had. Literally the same thing, but earlier in the movie when the whole world turned on Superman in like 5
oh,
seconds.
yeah. Yeah.
So that was again, like, you hit all the points correctly, where it's just like, it's not that quick. Not that quick turnaround. Mind you, I also was, like, thinking about this while I was watching the movie. I was so distracted, like, I didn't even pay attention to Guy Gardner confronting him and stuff.
Mm,
I was just, like, talking about to my mom. I was like, "How did they turn on him so quickly?" And I don't like that because it's just I don't know, because it's just like the people are not dumb, for that's what I really liked about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man is that in the first Spider-Man specifically, you had that sequence of people being interviewed, like civilians being
mhm.
interviewed about Spider-Man. Like, "Oh, he can be a woman. Why are you saying he's a man?" It's like, "I hate him. I don't like him." And then, like, he didn't give her a reason, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you have a good spectrum of people's opinions of Spider-Man, but for Superman, are we just under the assumption that everyone likes him? And if so, how come with just like one piece of information, which might be, wrong, or, AI does exist, I guess, in this universe, or doesn't exist in this universe. Like, how can we believe, like, so, yep, we verified it with like two experts and it's real. And like, they're just so quick to like turn around. It was just so random. Like, I was just like, okay, wait a minute. Like, at least have a sequence where people are not exactly the Raimi sequence where like, "Ah, I don't like him, I hate him, no reason, I just don't like him." Like, like the Brooklyn people. But, like, at least show I remember there was one particular shot where there was a woman crying at the sight of Superman after hearing the news, which I didn't like. I was just like, "That's so random." She's like, "Oh," like, she was just bawling, like, "Oh, Superman, why could you?" It was more it should have been more like, "Superman, is that true?" Like, like, they're, like, questioning him rather than, like, immediately throwing, like, soda cans at his head, like, I just it was just so quick. It was just so why like, there should be people who were like, that were saying, like, "I knew he was bad. I knew it," like, so
Yeah.
showing, like, a varied perspective on who this person is because I guess that's what Zack Snyder decided to do, like, 300% where, like, he destroyed a whole city. He leveled the whole city. That's the whole point of Man of Steel. He leveled the whole city, and
Yeah.
he's suffering the consequence jurisdiction like, it would in front of the jury in Batman v Superman, right? Like, this is a person who can level the earth, and, like, were we gonna so, just and I think the lack of the city having a character to it really bothered me, where it's just like, "Okay, wait, not everyone is gonna turn against Superman, right? Like, there are gonna people be like, "We still support you," and we did see that little notion of support from, like, that war that was happening. That was the only thing that I remember that showed that there were people that still supported Superman, where that those children, which was great, but it was just like, I don't think people would be so quick to turn around. Like, again, like, to your point with Lex Luthor, I don't think people are gonna be so quick to turn like, that's not realistic at all. Just to have that people like, "Superman, is that true?" Like, questioning what they believe and seeing somebody break down, not from, like, just literally break down immediately, but just saying, like, questioning, "Is this reality? Like, is this the Superman I looked up to?" And showing that side to it, would have been helpful rather than just jumping right into, "Oh, we hate you, Superman. We knew it. We knew you," but people are, like, yelling his name at the beginning. So I was like, "What? Okay, wait a minute."
Yeah.
I feel like I kinda suspended my disbelief about that just because, like, just the level of institutional trust in this film is what like, just as a
Yeah.
the way that they're willing to believe the media and believe what is said, I'm just like, "This is a whole other universe." Like, it's not necessarily in touch with what got going on beyond, I guess, social media's, influence in this film. So I kind of hand waved that, but I think in terms of if we're gonna base it on like, our own standards and, like, how things would play out here, yeah, I would agree. It was pretty unrealistic in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. And I do also suspend disbelief in that sense too, because the whole premise of the film was like he's trying to do good, but people are still framing him as bad. And so it's like I can yeah, I it was way too fast and I would have obviously appreciated some more nuanced views, but I can, believe that even though it's so fast. I don't know about that woman crying. That was a bit extreme in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
Slow-mo too, slow-mo.
but I think it's just like it's possible that people can turn on someone who is trying to do good so fast because of like media, because of like social media too, and all those monkeys, sending out those
Yeah.
tweets and stuff. I can understand where like that is probably, the case because even now in like society, like if someone tries to do something good, if someone says something that's like, even the remotest sense of like controversial, and it's like, whoa, I think rich people should pay a little bit more, like they're completely just like trashed online, and like, how could you say that? They shouldn't spend 5%, they should only spend 0%. And you're like, whoa, like how like that is like an altruistic thing. That is a good thing for society to give back, But it's like, it's just so twisted. So I can kind of understand the Superman part, but the Lex Luthor part, I was like, where are the monkeys? The monkeys are going to be typing like free Lex Luthor, So I was like, but I agree. I do think that it went a little bit too fast, and I think the city did have a lack of character compared to like Spider-Man, the Raimi Spider-Man. That was very good character development with the city. Great movie. But is there anything else that you want to talk about that was like sort of bad or that you didn't like as much, or shall we just hop into the themes?
What did you guys think about the monologue that Superman had at the end?
Or we could talk about it
And
that.
Lex Luthor, he's like, "That's what you got wrong with me, Luthor. That's what." That one.
Yeah, so that was gonna be my theme talk because
Oh,
I will say I thought it was corny. I thought it was very explicit. And I thought, like, as a theme, that's what Superman was, right? He's a very corny, very explicit, very like, I'm just trying to do good, right? But like, even though sometimes I fail, I'm just always trying. And I love that idea of trying. And I think that's the most important takeaway that I get from this movie, that even though like you're trying to do good, people will frame it as bad and stuff like that, but just don't be disappointed, just keep trying.
mm,
And I really like that sentiment, but I do admit that that scene, it felt like he was just telling. He was just telling the audience, and it was a little bit corny. But I feel like at this point where our media literacy is like so low in society, I'm like, sometimes you gotta tell people like this guy is the bad guy and this guy is the good guy. Because there's so many things like Sam will tell me like, oh my god, like if you look at like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos and stuff, people are like, oh my god, Tony Soprano is the hero. And it's like, oh my god, Walter White's like the good guy. I'm like, what are you talking about? Did we not watch the same thing? Does Walter White have to literally tell the audience like, I'm the bad guy? But it's like,
yeah.
where are we getting this information? But that's why I do like that thing at the end, because it was like, hey, this is Superman. This is Superman talking. He's the good guy. Don't go, Lex Luthor deserved better, because he was just a hater the entire film. There's like very little, if not nothing, to redeem him. So I think it was very like sort of surface level with that, but I think that's kind of what we need, especially because I see so many kids watching this movie. I see so many like reels and stuff on Instagram. They're like, oh, their dad or their mom taking their little son or daughter, and they're like, oh my god, what'd you think about the movie? They're like, oh, it was awesome. And I'm like, I can't. That's so emotional. I know it's not a movie for like a sophisticated, like artsy take on this, but I just love seeing hope and optimism, especially with children, because I feel like children are being deprived of hope more and more these days. So just seeing that, it made me feel really good. But what were your thoughts about that last scene, Jalen?
I co-sign a lot of what you said, and I personally don't. I interpreted that as like that's who Superman is. He's somebody that has beliefs, has convictions, and not that they're never shaken, but like he wants to profess what he feels and what he believes at the core of his self. And like that monologue was coming from his heart. And even if it feels preachy or like it was to address media literacy and where that's at in our country and the world, I felt like it still fit really well in that scene, and it didn't detract for me at all. It felt very character driven. And that leads to like the theme that I felt resonated with me the in the movie, which was sincerity and like just several moments where I expected a character to kind of wink, at the camera or like have some sort of like, are we like, is this weird or whatever? Like the scene where Superman is about to turn himself in and he has that very sweet moment with Lois Lane and um he says something to the effect of like maybe I'm the punk rock or whatever, something like that. You remember the scene. Um and I expected her to kind of be like, like kind of give one of those like faces to the audience to kind of be like, girl, like what year are you from? But she doesn't. And like I heard some awkward giggles in the audience, but I found myself being like, no, like let that line ride. It's fine. And it's him saying how he's just like something that he was thinking and feeling in that moment. And so to the point about the monologue, I felt very similarly about that. We don't always have to lampshade or wink or show that we're actually in 2025, not 1955. We can just say what we're thinking and it's okay. And we don't have to wink all the time. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I see that a lot online actually. There was like this recent talk about cringe, being cringe online, and that a lot of this one professor, I don't really remember it, but they said like essentially this idea of being cringe is preventing a lot of people from doing good, from like being a good person, and also like just like voicing their own opinions and stuff because it's cringe, especially with younger generations, right? It's like, oh, like don't say that or like don't do that or like, don't try because trying is cringe. And it's like that is the opposite thing that people should be learning. And I think that's what Superman is doing. Like, I think Superman inherently, if we think about that word, could be cringe, but he doesn't care. Like, it's a very positive sense of masculinity, right? It's just he's trying. He's trying to be a good person. He's doing what it takes to be a good person. Hey, if he's cringy, if people think like, oh, like how could you do that? Like, they're judging him and stuff like that. Like, don't worry about it. Like, just focus on trying to be a good person. And that's what it's all about, and that's what I really like about the movie, and that it teaches, like, these younger generations to, that it's okay, like, just try, and so I like what you said a lot. But what about you, Ramel? Like, how did you feel about that last monologue with Superman?
Yeah. I mean, similar to you guys, at face value, it felt very on the nose and a little like cheesy. But I mean, all the things that we talked about, especially with Superman, uh, like what the hey, dude, with crypto, and he is like a cheesy person, and I'm really glad that we're coming back to the comic book version of Superman, where he doesn't really always take himself so seriously. Like in Zack Snyder is tempted to do that with Superman, where he's just so brooding all the time. But it's okay to like let out a smile or things like that, and it's nice to see Superman smile again,
Oh,
because I feel like
yeah.
I never saw that in the Zack Snyder ones. Um, and we're talking about a guy who we're returning back to the root where he's wearing his underpants outside of his pants in the costume, right? So I don't really appreciate people really dragging this part of like the movie because I've been seeing the reason I asked this is because I've been seeing it dragged online so much where it's like, oh, dude, like this is so corny. Oh, it's so cheesy. And tomorrow, you're right. Like, there are kids watching this that probably are here for the monsters and the action sequences, but like are not fully understanding like the purpose of Superman. And like, this is his way of just like, it's like, don't do drugs, kids. Like this was his way of doing that, where it's just like, it's not okay to do nothing. Like, it's okay to try. It's okay to put I think he mentioned like, I wake up every morning just like you, human, putting one foot in front of the other, not knowing what's going to happen, but I still do it. Like, that's what
Yeah.
he basically said. And that's just such an important message, like you're saying, especially if we're talking about cringe, where, maybe this was a mistake. Maybe people see this as a mistake as Superman, like saying this really cheesy monologue where it's like, okay, that's really weird. But then at least he's trying. He's trying to put out good. Like he's put out good in the world and cheesiness. And also considering all the things that he went through prior to this happening, like he literally was so defeated he had to go to his mom and pa's farm. Like,
Mhm.
these are things that he was thinking in his own head too at that time, whereas, like, his dad or his pa was like, "It's not all the things that you're growing up, like, your upbringing isn't who you are, it's, like, the actions that you do that become who you are." And it's very reminiscent of like the Christopher Nolan one. Oh, we're going to talk about the third one. But reminiscent of the Christopher Nolan one where it's just like, why do we fall, Bruce? He's like, oh, because so we can learn how to get ourselves back up.
Yeah.
And that sense of resiliency is really important, which is going into the next topic, I think, the third one, the themes of this movie, right?
Yeah. We started the themes already, buddy.
Oops. All right.
No, it's okay. Like I do like those themes a lot, and I do think that trying is the biggest theme that I'm taking away from this. And it's a quote that I really like. It says like, "In the pursuit of perfection, you forgot to do good." And I think that's a quote that really resonates with me because it's like we always try to make things so perfect, like try to make everything just perfect, and everything is like even if you try to be kind, if you're trying to be like Superman, and at the end of the day, you're like, I am just trying to do good. Because if you're trying to do perfect, if you were trying to, stop the whole war on both sides and all this stuff, like there is no sense of like perfect. Because when you just try to chase perfect, the one that's going to make everything the most accurate and most politically correct, the most, no one's going to hate you or whatever, you will forget to do good. Because doing good is the heart of this movie. And that's what I love so much about it. Because even that scene with the parents that I love seeing, because those parents in that scene is just like they're so like like ordinary, and I can't believe like how wonderful I felt seeing them. Like when they first started the movie and the mom was completely hunched over the table talking to the phone, like they felt so real, and they felt like such good American people. And I feel like the way that politics have become with this country and the way that the world has become, it feels like we are forgetting that there are good people out there. Like that there's just these people who are just trying to do good. And even if they're like completely out in Kentucky or some random state or some random farm, they are like really good people. And I think about this a lot, especially like as a person of color. I'm just like, I know that I'm not going to be received with love and admiration and like care from the whole world. But it just gives me a lot of hope to think that, hey, there are still people out there that even though I don't look like them, even though that I'm not like them, they will still look at me and say, like, you need to be saved. You need to be helped, and we'll take care of you and we'll love you, even though, we're not the same type of people. And I think that's where, like, just watching this movie, it's like, it's such a divided country that we live in right now, divided world, to be honest. And it's just like, wow, there is still people that are just good. And for the first time, even though Superman is someone that I've never seen myself like visually represented on screen, this is the first time where I'm like, hey, I am trying to be like Superman. I am also trying to be punk rock. So that's one of the themes that I really loved about this movie. And it makes me emotional, especially seeing the goddamn war at the end with the children. And as you said, Ramel, like they were calling for Superman, and Superman wasn't able to help. And I think about that a lot because I know this world, there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of unfortunate, like horrible things happening to so many people, especially children across the world. And I think about Superman, and I know Superman doesn't really exist. And I think that breaks my heart. That shreds it to pieces, because there are these kids out there who are looking for a hero, right? And I know Guy Gardner and the Justice Gang, they come and they save the day, and I really love that. I know that there's so many people out there who are looking for that help, looking for that hero, and I'm just like, hey, I've been looking for a hero too my whole life, right? And it's like, god dang, like let's try to help. Like if anything, like let's just try to be kind. Let's just try to help in whatever way we can, because at the end of the day, like there's some really awful stuff happening in the world. So I really love that scene, and then the whole messaging of that Superman just can't do it alone. So it's a moment in this film where I'm just like, it's so hopeful, it's so optimistic, but it's also like I just can't help but separate our own world and what's going on. That it breaks my heart too. So, what are your thoughts about other themes about the movie?
Well, I want to say firstly, what you said really touched me, and I saw myself in Superman too. And I think maybe that's my biggest takeaway is that, like, no, we don't have laser eyes. That's not something that we're maybe ever gonna get the capability to do. But like he was very, very sometimes at points uncomfortably human, and we have all of that in spades, you know. So like maybe we can't come and save the day in the specific way that he and the Justice Gang did, but like we have all the humanity that we need to make a lasting change in the world. And maybe that's my youth or my optimism speaking, but like I think that was the takeaway that we're supposed to be left with, is that like you have the real sauce that Superman has. Like the super strength and all this stuff comes in handy, but it's his ability to see the humanity in everyone and everything that is what makes the difference. So yeah, that's my theme that I'm gonna be taking with me.
Yeah. I really like that too because I wrote this in from my Batman script too. But there's the idea that I constantly looked at Batman, and for now, like it's like Superman. Like I try constantly to say, I don't look like Superman, right? Or like I want to be like Superman. And so it's always like framing Superman on this pedestal. But if you flip it the other way, like Superman is trying to be us. And that's what I really love because it's like, again, like with the idea of perfect, like I can't be perfect. But Superman, who is perfect by standards, is not trying to be like more like himself. He's trying to be more like us, the good, right? So I really like that. What about you, Ramel?
Yeah. You reminded me of that quote that Lois said to him. He's like, "Everyone that you see that they're beautiful," or something like that.
Yes.
Like, he sees the beauty in everyone. Um, and, like, of course, like, yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head, like, with just everything, like, everything about Superman, like, that's pretty interesting too, yeah, I didn't think about that, that Superman is really trying to be like us. He is trying to remind the public that he is human. He grew up in a farm in Kansas, and he has human ways, and maybe his and Jalen said is, like, maybe you have super strength or, you have, like, heat vision, all that stuff, and those come in handy, but, like, what your actions do, like, what you do is what really defines you as a person, and, I think, like, to that point, I think what really strengthens that argument too is, like, you wonder why like, there was a whole plot line with Mr. Terrific and Lois Lane,
Mhm.
like, 2 of people that do not have powers whatsoever, and they were able to save Superman, right? Like, Superman does need help sometimes and all that stuff, and it just further emphasizes that you don't have to have those flight, you don't have to have heat vision or anything like that, or super strength, and you just do what you can with what you have, and that's what matters. Because Lois Lane, I mean, without her going to the Hall of Justice and telling the Justice Gang, like, "Hey, we need to help him out," like, he turned himself in, um, and then without her doing that, none of this would have happened, like, Superman would have never been saved, even no matter how much he talks to Metamorpho, it's not gonna happen. Like, they're gonna be stuck in a pocket dimension if Lois Lane and Mr. Terrific didn't open it to begin with. And if you think about it, Mr. Terrific is such an appealing character, especially now with other people watching the movie. They're like, "Oh my god, he's awesome. He's terrific if you want." But he has no powers whatsoever. He's just a smart guy. He's just a really smart dude. And like he's just doing what he can. And although he's socially awkward, like that little bit where Lois is like, "What are those circles?" He's like, "They're spheres. Like circles are two-dimensional. Like spheres are three. Are you kidding me?" Like, he's just so they all have their little quirks, but like you guys were all saying, it's like it matters what like you do with what you have in the moment. And as long as you're doing something and you have that good intention and like you are not reaching for perfection, which is like you're saying, like Superman is always trying to get at, like he's trying to make sure that there's world peace and all this, like these perfect standards but, like, he realized by the end of the movie that was like, no, it's just being good from day to day. Like, he literally says, like, waking up and putting one foot in front of the other. That's what matters. Like, rather than seeing the bigger picture, it's like, I stopped a war. I did this because it's never that clear cut. And so, yeah, that's why I really like that Mr. Terrific was given such a huge spotlight because it's a guy that's not super. Like, he doesn't have any sort of like special abilities other than being really smart and being very innovative. I mean, he's basically like Iron Man, right? It's like Iron Man has no powers and we've seen Iron Man in the dirt so many times, like, because, he's been shot down and wounded, and Mr. Terrific is the same way, and it's fun that a lot of people, other than loving Superman, of course, a lot of people are walking out of these theaters really loving Mr. Terrific, and then
Yeah.
without even fully realizing that this guy is, like, 100% human, like, there's nothing other than his intellect, there's nothing special about him. But what he's doing is really special. Like what he's doing with what he has, with his intellect, rather than sitting around and like being like a monkey with a keyboard, like in the Pocket Dimension, right? So yeah, it's
No,
pretty fun.
that's a great point that you brought up, and I guess, like, it didn't really register to me now. I think you can obviously make the case that Mr. Terrific is terrific because of also his superb intellect and stuff, but then now that you mentioned, like, you do try to do good with the things that you have, like, Lois going to the Hall of Justice was like she was trying to be an advocate. She was trying to speak up for someone who couldn't speak up for himself at that moment because he was locked up in the pocket dimension. But also, like, Jimmy Olsen, right? His babe magnetism, right, is what he had, and he was able to use it for good, right? To save the world. And technically, without Jimmy Olsen, and technically without Lois Lane, technically without Mr. Terrific, like nothing would have been saved. Like Superman could not have saved everyone, could not have saved everything, right? And I think that's a really good point. That even those human characters who essentially have no superpower, they were still heroes. And that's a really good point. That makes me think so much more about this movie and so much more that I love it because, again, leaving the film, it's like, I love how you said, like, Superman smiled when he's laying down on his chair and they're like, play the film of his or his parents. He loves it. Right. And
Suits him.
it soothes him. It's his Kansas family, Ma and Pa Kent. Like, it is so emotional, but to see him smile is like, oh my God, because it's like, I know that he puts it out there, he tries his best, and everyone in the film was trying their best, and, like, what can I take away? Like, what can I start doing to help more than I'm already doing? So, that's a really good point, you know? We have a hero in all of us, and even though we can't save, like, the countries, at least save at least one person. I think that's all that it matters. So,
Yeah.
what anything else? Any other themes about it?
I don't have any, but I'm excited. I'm excited for like watching another movie in this universe, which is shocking me as I'm saying it, but I'm looking forward to it. I've been hearing that it's, going to be more varied in terms of
Yeah.
like the tone and things like that. So I'm cautiously optimistic about it. But yeah, thank you for having me on here too. I've appreciated this opportunity to talk about something that I otherwise wouldn't have. So thanks.
Of course. We have to give our scores out of 10 for the movie.
Oh my
Oh
Don't
shoot,
don't
you're
even
right.
don't forget.
God. Okay, wait. Sorry. Oh, can I do that now? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Out of 10,
Out of 10.
Yeah. Ooh. Out of 10. And
that's
are we doing point fives or is that like totally illegal?
yeah.
It is what is in your heart, you know?
Okay. I'm feeling a point five. Um,
It's
I would say
you setting the
I'm actually
precedent.
doing a 2.25, but I'm thinking 8.25.
8
I think that I really enjoyed it. And I think it's the first movie and hopefully something that will extend for a good while. So I want to give it room to breathe and to improve and on itself and expound on the themes that it's starting with here. But I think it was a really strong start that restored a lot of faith in, I can speak for myself as a casual superhero movie watcher, in that audience. It restored a lot of faith for these types of movies. So 8.25 for me.
Solid, solid. About you, Ramel?
Man, my brain is so used to the letterbox 5 stars thing.
Just
I like your
multiply it by
scale of
2.
10.
Multiply it by 2.
All right, all right. Um, I'll give it a solid 9 for me. It's a
Okay.
solid 9 for me. Yeah. I think the whole 1 point was probably just, yeah, just like the quick turnover of people. This is very minute things. Um, but with movies, I usually go off of my first instinct is like, can I rewatch this and learn something new? And this movie definitely fits the bill for that. So that's why it's such a high score. And considering there's a lot of things that I'm hearing from you guys throughout this whole conversation that I'm learning that I didn't catch the first time I watched it, I don't have a list, so I can't watch it like 4 times a week like you guys. But the thing is, like this movie, like Jalen's saying, it stands the test of time, but it also stands within its own time where we really needed this kind of movie. Um, and although a lot of people were like off put it because it's superhero facing, like the actual values and principles that it's putting out are very human. And it's something that we lack in media nowadays, like you're saying, Timur. So yeah, I give it a 9 out of 10 for me personally.
That's that's a great score. And in fact, that is my score too. Because
Hey.
I also I feel like I am way too positive with my scores because I score everything that I watch, play, read, and all that stuff. And I tell Sam this too that I see this now with Superman, is that Superman thinks everyone is beautiful, right? I think every single work of art that I watch, every movie, every TV show, everything starts out at a 10 for me. And just like when I think about it more, then it will go down. But if I can't really think about these things, it'll stay at a 10. Even though, like, let's say it's not a 10 out of 10 movie, it's like it was perfect for what it needed to be. And so for this movie, I would rate it a 9 out of 10 because this movie was perfect in so many senses. But as we talked about, like the bad stuff, like it did bring it down a little bit. Had those things sort of been rectified, maybe even like 10 more minutes of screen time, it would have jumped up back to a 10 out of 10. So I think incredible movie. I am excited for what is going to come out next, but I'm also like in my heart, I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling the same sort of worry that I had with Superman. I'm like, is it going to be good? Like Supergirl, is it going to be
Yeah,
good?
Supergirl's the next one. Look out.
Yeah, Clay. Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah, Clayface too. They're going to do a horror type thing with Clayface. I'm like, is that going to be good? I don't really know. Even like Creature Commandos earlier this year, right, was animated show by James Gunn. I was like, is this gonna be good? Do I even bother watching it?
Yeah.
And it was good. And then I watched Peacemaker too, and I was like, is Peacemaker gonna be good? Like, do I even bother? And it was good. And like for some reason,
Great. Yeah.
every single time with especially the James Gunn universe, it's like I completely am so hesitant about it, and I always end up really liking it, which is like kind of crazy to me. But 9 out of 10, and that is our scores for this show, this podcast, I guess if you call it that. But thank you both for joining me for this, endeavor to talk about Superman. Thank you both for going to the theater and coordinating a time for me to discuss it with you all because I know that we're all busy and it's easy to watch a movie and then just kind of like not hop on an hour call for talking about it. So thank you both so much for taking time out of your day. And any last thoughts?
Oh, thank you for having us. Yeah. See? Oh, we're harmonizing. You see that? There's a screw. Maybe we were said by Explorer. We're in the mail. We're reading it off. We're making sure that we're covering all bases.
We're supposed to say, I do my line first and then you do yours. Come on.
It says like, comment, subscribe, disable,
Super. But no, seriously, Timur, thank you so much. I appreciate you and the work that you do. I'm a Sable Stewer for life. I don't think that I'm sure you actually have a fan name that I'm butchering, but
Yeah.
it's my fan status.
Essentially, it's called the stew. So you are part of the stew. That's the idea.
We got something brewing here. We got something brewing.
Something cooking.
You
That's for
think I'm
sure.
like a carrot or like a celery? I mean, we can.
You
never
can
know.
you can
Big
decide.
fan of celery. Oh no, I don't like celery.
I'll think on it.
Interesting.
Celery's involved. Just cut me out of the video entirely.
And so today's episode was sponsored by Big Celery. I don't know if you guys were knowing this, but
Yeah.
I gotta
Like
cut it out now.
but with celery, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So there you have it. We gave you our thoughts and opinions about what Superman meant to us, and now I want to hear what you all think about it down in the comments. Do you agree or disagree with our opinions and the general consensus about it? Let us know, and if you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. As always, check the links in the description for my main video essay channel and my Patreon to support the channel and recommend media for me to review next. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you all next time.